Man, I am so excited about being here today. Thank you so much for taking your Saturday out to just be here. So when Dewey and Bergen asked me to go, okay, would you do the adult section there? That was about all the direction I got, all right? And so I just like, okay, what do I say? What do I do? And so here's what we're going to do is this. We're going to give you a lot of ideas about how to do adult education. We're going to give you we're going to talk about a couple of skills. We're going to share with you just ideas. And at the end, we're going to do a little practicum thing that we do in order to develop Bible classes for adults. So it's just not one thing, but it's like several different things. One of the things I want you to do also and feel very comfortable with is I want you to feel very comfortable and raising your hand and going, hey, can you go into that a little bit more? Can you explain that a little bit more? What does that look like? What are you doing well with this? What are you not doing well with that? And so, again, we have a lot of just different ideas. You can tell I got jobs. I killed a lot of trees. There's a lot of paper up here. But we're just going to try and do, again, just a lot of different things. And hopefully, that we just want to give you something. We really want to give you like a nugget that you can take out of here that will help you to improve your adult ed ministry. That's what we're trying to do. And so if you walk away with a nugget, then that'll be a good day for us, all right? So here we go. We're going to start off here with teacher training. And I got to let you know, teacher training, there's always this problem. Here's the problem. Is you never have enough adult ed teachers. It's just a problem. Let me tell you where we were when I took over adult education at Sunset. When I took over adult education at Sunset, we had a lot of our, it was really the Sunset School of Preaching guys doing our teaching. And what I realized is that, I know this is really going to blow you away, but we get old. We get old and we sort of fade away into this. And what was happening was that a lot of our SIBI or Sunset people were actually like, they were aging. They had to go out and preach on the weekends. And our what I would call our adult ed teaching corps was shrinking. You're getting smaller, getting smaller, and getting smaller. And we were on this system to where somebody taught, and they taught for, it's sort of like, remember the bus ministry, where we do bus ministry? Like when you signed up for bus ministry, guess what? You were perpetually, the only way you got out of the bus ministry is they killed the bus ministry, all right? I mean, seriously, the joy buses, that's how I got out of the joy bus. I had to move, all right? And they eventually killed it. But here's the thing, is that we put people in a teaching role, and they would just do it, and they would do it, and they would do it, and they would do it, and then one day they go, they're just gone. And so what we had to do was this, is we had to come up with a system. We had to come up with something that was, that would actually train our teachers. What is it that's going to train our teachers? We had to have more teachers. Jordan is an example of that, right? Jordan is, he's a Sunset guy, even though he's wearing a Texas shirt. And so we had to do something to train teachers. And so what happened was this, is we found this gentleman by the name of Michael Whitworth, and he was doing a teaching rocket seminar. And a teaching rocket seminar was this, and I want to let you know, I actually got a hold of Michael. He is still doing these things, and he sent me a flyer, yeah, if you don't mind. And you could still get a hold of him, and you could actually get a hold of him. He will come in, and he will do a seminar. And Teaching Rocket Seminar was taking people and training them to be Bible class teachers. And we did the first one, and we loved it. And he goes, I have another one. And he goes, and so we brought him in for that. Then also is that after the second one, we said, do you have a third one? And he goes, no, I don't, but I'll create something for you. And so he came in, and he actually did a third report. So we had three we had 3 what we call teaching rockets. He comes in, does an excellent job, just does an excellent job on how to train your Bible class teachers. But here's the problem we had. After 3 of those, here's what we had to figure out. Is this. So what do we do next? I mean, how do we keep this thing going? And so we came up with what we call blast off. Blast off for us. Blast off is our continual Bible class training for adult ministry. And here's what sort of weird is. I'm in charge of this, but I'm going to turn this over. I'm actually going to turn it over to the guy who created Blast Off. He's one of our deacons. Tim, come on up. Tim is an adult ed deacon. He has a lot of ministry experience also. But Tim said, I think I can do this. And what he did was this. He literally created what we call Blast Off. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to him, honestly, for the rest of the session. And he's going to talk to you about what we do in Blast Off as far as adult ed training. All right? So this is Tim Evans. He's really good. And he, now you can't go backwards. But Tim Evans is one of our deacons, and he's going to share with you about, do you need this? You don't need this.
No,
okay, so he's going to share with you about Blast Off. All right?
All right. So I have 45 minutes of material that we've got to put into 32. That doesn't sound like anything we normally have to do on Sunday morning, does it?
Yeah.
You know, we usually have like an hour's worth of material that we've got to cram in. So first we're going to talk about Blast Off. In the end of the Teaching Rocket series, Michael Whitworth talked about head, heart, and hands. And that's his last seminar. And we decided that we needed another one, that we needed feet. Okay, I decided that we needed another one, that we needed feet. So our series is that. We start with the head, we move to the heart, and hands, and then go to the feet. So what is the head? The head is teaching people how to study the Bible. It is amazing that in our fellowship that we are so Bible-based that people still don't know how to study the Bible. And so we felt like there was a strong need as we develop teachers to go back to the basics, to get them to study. And what does that mean? Well, let's see. That means maybe you need to get a Bible handbook and learn something. Maybe look through a Bible almanac or a survey or an atlas or a Bible dictionary or word studies and concordances. In the head, we actually guide people into how to look up information and search out questions that they have. Because that's the first thing we do. We have them ask questions of the text. We do that all the time, don't we? Every time I read something, I'm going, okay, what did he mean here? What does this mean? Or why does this translation use this word versus this translation using a different word? What's the real meaning? And so we have, as we start this head process, that's what we do. Asking questions of the text. Not answering, asking. What is it? What's going on? And then we walk through, using books like this, study tools, to help answer your questions. Of course, the first book we use to answer your questions is the Bible. And that's why a concordance is so important. We want you to be looking in the Bible first and get your answers there. And if you can't quite figure that out, then let's go somewhere else. Let's use some deeper tools. What we almost prohibit, but not entirely, are commentaries. I don't want anybody using a commentary until maybe the very last thing, because a commentary, no matter how good it is still full of opinion and somebody else's perspectives. Once you go in with your own and dig in and get that from yourself. If you have to use a commentary, then use 5. Don't ever use just one commentary. Use it up to 5. So after we spend some time going through the head part and getting people familiar with the use of these different resources, just before we switch over to the heart, we actually show them how they get most of these resources online. But we try to do it first. Hey, get your hands in the books. Look, learn how to dig in, learn how to function through this. And then we move into the heart. And the heart is simply, what does this mean to me? I mean, I've read it and I understand it. I understand what the Bible's saying, but what does it mean to me? There is an author that used a book called Grasping God's Word. It's actually a textbook. I should have brought one this morning. That's one of the many books I didn't pick up. That talks about the concept that the Bible was written to a village. And so we first got to figure out what that means to that village. Why did they need it? What was going on there? And then as we do that, we realize that there's a gap between their village and our village. There's cultural gaps, there's hidden time gaps, there's all kinds of different things that separate us from that village. So that we can't everything doesn't automatically relate. So then what we have to do is figure out what is the principles that cross that gap and come to us. And so there's the concept that we're trying to do with the heart. What are the principles that still affect us today from whatever author we're talking through that day is speaking to them? Where does that go? And so why does it matter? Where's that heart? What hits me? And after we started this back before COVID, didn't we? It was before COVID when we started Blast Off. And COVID stopped us. We didn't finish. And it's been restructured and refitted until the point that we realized that everybody in our congregation could use Head and Heart. Every single one. And so that's what we do now. We open it up to anyone to come to Head and Heart. And then after we get through that, we talk to those who, do you want to go on and become a teacher? Then let's move to Hands. And Hands is about learning how to outline, learning how to set up all these questions and all these things that you've learned and all these principles that you've gathered and application that you've gathered through Heart. Now we're going to help you put that together into an outline for a message so that you can teach a lesson. It's so easy to pick up somebody else's outline and go from that, but you got to learn how to use your own. And so that's what we do in Hands, is teach you how to structure that outline. Teach you how to use some PowerPoint. I noticed that Bill put one of the do's and the 10 commandments of PowerPoint up here, of things that you should do. You definitely want to pick that up. I don't have time to go through that this morning, but we want to then guide them in how to create their lesson. And then we get to feet. Feet is practical. We've got to get you working. And apparently, that's a Bill thing. He likes feet because, you remember what he said about what we're doing here today? That we're actually going to do something at the end and actually process through some of the things that you've learned, and a tool that you can use. And that's what we want our teachers to do. We don't want to just now get them through and give them all this education. That was what we're having with the Teaching Rocket. It was great information, but then you left the seminar and left the weekend and you're like, now what? What'd I do? And so not only do we do a workshop format for all of these classes for Head, Heart, and Hands, actually taking time within the classroom to look into the books, to dig in, to get used to using that information. But we do provide a practicum of some sort at the end. Sometimes it has been a class that we'll set aside on maybe Wednesday nights, and people will sign up to come in and teach, and we'll have people critique and provide you some feedback on your lesson. That's one way that we do the practicum. Another way we do that is mentorships. We have a more experienced, I hate to rate teachers, but there's an A teacher, and there's a B teacher, and there's a C teacher. Hopefully you don't have any F teachers, but there are different levels of teaching. So we try to find one of those as top-notch teacher and take someone alongside of them and guide them through a kind of a mentorship in some way. And how that somewhat works, and how I've used it several different times, is somebody is interested in teaching, bring them alongside, and I'll give them like my intro. Do the icebreaker this morning. Just get up there, get used to being in front of the class, give the icebreaker, ask that question, kind of get used to facilitating the discussion, getting people to talk. Just do that. If they're comfortable with that and we can move on, then it's like, all right, I've got 3 or 4 points I want to make in my lesson this Sunday. you take this point. You've got 10 minutes to take this point. So I'll give them some time to work on it themselves and then sit down with them and we'll walk through it and talk about it and talk about, well, that kind of jumps into my point, so you need to back off of that, or you help them develop it a little bit more. And then so that next Sunday or that next class period, then they'll teach that point. And then you just basically, as they get comfortable, give them more and more till you're letting them teach the entire class and then providing them critique at the end. And so that's a couple of ways that we do this feat, that we just help people get from, hey, this is what I know, this is what I learned, now how do I use it? And guide them through. Another way that we do that is through evaluations. Bill, I'm going to look at this for me. I'll let each of you see this before we do it. As Bible class teachers of any class, but especially as adults, we should be open to critique. I'm not talking about criticism, because there's always somebody who's not going to like your lesson. But we should always be open to critique and improving what we're doing. And we had a little training a few weeks ago, and I told that group in there, I said, if you're not willing for somebody to help you and grow in your teaching, then you don't need to be teaching. I mean, it's just flat out. You just shouldn't be doing it. It's important for us to always grow. So we've created this evaluation form, and it's not one for the faint of heart. We used to try to hand it out to just anyone in the class to give an evaluation to the teacher, but that didn't work very well. There's a little bit more, and if somebody's being overly critical, then it's not something we really want the teacher to do. And if somebody's all they're doing is giving a bunch of fluff and saying, oh, great job, way to go, we don't want that either. I mean, we need the encouragement, but we need positive reinforcement that's going to guide us into being better. So we started, what we're doing with this is that we have other teachers fill this out. So it's somebody who's involved in this process, who kind of knows what work's gone into it, who can then give a good, honest critique. It's not somebody who just showed up one morning and is not happy about the lesson. It's someone who might be in the same position next week. And so they're going to be doing it. So you'll see just general information at the top, but then your overall rating. How does it go? We probably need another box in here, because often I check the space in between good and excellent. Of course, I have a hard time checking excellent for anything. I'm always having to redo surveys because, why didn't you choose excellent for our service? Well, because I don't ever choose excellent, because it wasn't excellent. I mean, it was really good, but it wasn't excellent. So it's hard for me to do that. So I'm often choosing, I check the space in between good and excellent, because I think, well, there should be great there, right? They were great, but they weren't excellent. And then what was the presentation engaging? Was it applicable? Or was it nothing new? Did they engage the class? Did they get the class involved? And that doesn't mean they have to necessarily ask questions, although I think they should be. You should be, as a teacher, to really engage your class. But was everybody paying attention? And did they give you something that you could use, that you could walk out with? Or was it just, I've heard this before, you gave me nothing new at all? Hopefully that never gets circled, but it can happen. Teaching style. Is it lecture, which is kind of what I'm doing right now? I'm just talking to you. Was it the lecture? Was it discussion? Did they ask questions of the class and get that feedback? Was it textual? Can you go point to scripture this morning? You're not going to check me off on textual, but you should be able to do that. Was there class participation? And that's what Bill's going to do at the end of the day, of getting you together and doing something. Class participation is not about answering questions, it's about getting them to do something. It's a different thing. Or is there some other thing that caught your attention? Did the style work for the class? You've got to change. Those of you who've taught many different classes realize that you've got to adjust. You can't just walk in with the same way to teach. You've got to shift for who you are. That's why I don't teach kids. I can't shift for kids. I just don't know how. I just don't work. I barely taught my own, so I don't have the style to teach kids, but I can adjust to different age groups in the adult classes. So does that style, or did they shift their style to make it work for that particular class? And then just some general information. What about the teacher style did you appreciate? And again, how did they structure the class or bring on a topic that you liked? I have a teacher in my class rotation, his name is Brad Pruitt, some of you may know him. I don't know how his style works, I really don't. If I try to do what he does, I would fail. I mean, he has a different way of presenting and sending the information, and when I want to critique it, I'm like, this is awful. But then at the end of the class, people are talking and they're expressing things they learned and start sharing. I'm like, okay, it worked. But I can't do that. So I appreciate his style, even though it's something that I can't do. And so I mean, that's how you might rate that or evaluate that. What suggestions do you have for the teacher? What could they have done differently? What do you think could have made a bigger impact on the class? What are meaningful applications and ideas did you get from this lesson? I mean, did you learn something from the lesson? I mean, as a teacher, did you gather something from it? And then, of course, any additional comments or things that stuck out. So this is part of the FEAT process. A part of what we're trying to do to keep developing a teacher. I want this evaluation form every time I teach. I don't get it every time I teach because I can't convince somebody to do it all the time. But I want it because I constantly want to be growing in what I'm doing in teaching. And when I'm teaching similar classes, there's about 3 different classes that I rotate around and teach in a typical quarter. I want to know that I'm effective in those classes. Because if I'm not effective in those classes, I either want to change or not go back. Because if I can't reach that group, then I don't need to be in that group. Or I need to be changing.
Maybe you said this, but do you have particular ones you want to fill it out, or you want the whole class to fill it out?
No, I want other teachers to fill it out.
Okay.
Because they're the ones who are going to be more in tune with what's the process is and what I'm doing. Yeah, we tried that with just gathering, sending it out to people. You might have someone in your class, and there are a couple of ladies that I'm aware of in some classes and some other people that teach in other areas that I might hand it to, because then they've got that concept of how to develop a lesson and what's all behind that. But when you just start handing it out to general people, you either get overly critiqued or overly praised.
One of the things that I like to do when I do evaluations, I'll hand it to a man and I'll hand it to a woman, because I want to know if I touched each gender. All right, so I think that's important also, is that I want to make sure I touch both genders when I'm teaching.
But yeah, just in general, hey, somebody pick that up and fill it out today? No. You want to pick that person because you know that they're capable of giving you. They're not going to give you fluff, and they're not going to be over critical. Unless they need to be. And then all right. So that's really the gist of our blast off. And all that curriculum exists up here right now. Some of it's on paper. I'm still working on trying to get that out in a format that we can hand out to others. I've got head and heart done, or most of head and heart done. I'm still working on getting the others, because really head and heart's the part that to me has been the most essential in Sunset, and just getting people back into the Bible. I mean, we are known for being in the Bible, but yet, and I think we've taken it for granted that everybody out in the pew is in it too. And so that's one of the things that we offer it. I think we're trying to offer it twice a year. And it's just a 5-week course. And you come through and do that, and then from there, we're working on turning in the teaching portion of that into like a Saturday seminar, so that we don't have a long period of time there. So while we've been doing it, it's still a work in progress. But for the next few minutes, what little I have, I'd like to just kind of discuss one aspect of this that I see a lot of people struggle with. And that is how to ask good questions. We had one of our SIBI guys. He came through SIBI. He had been preaching before, had been teaching before, and one Sunday he calls me up. One week he calls me up and says, "I'm teaching this Sunday," and he goes, "I just don't know what questions to ask." And he goes, "Here's my lesson, or here's my point, and here's the question." And I went, "That's not going to get much discussion." So I asked him, "What do you want? What are you trying to get people to convey or process?" And so we worked through that, and we're able to just really kind of tweak his question a little bit to make it more palatable and hopefully more people would answer. So I just want to give you some quick ideas about do's and don'ts about asking questions. So a do is to have open-ended questions. I think we're all, anybody who stood in front of anybody any time frame, realize that you don't want to ask a question that has one word answer. You don't want to ask a yes/no question, or a true/false question, or is it sunny today, or do you like it when it rains? You know, you want to make sure your questions are open-ended. That require them to at least give you a sentence in response. So when you're asking questions, think about that. If I had to answer it, can I do that with one word, or am I going to have to give you a sentence? I might say yes, but, and I have to explain that yes. So if I'm asking questions instead, what is something, I may say, well, how does this work apply? You know, just a different, sometimes it's just changing the word at the beginning of your question. You know, what do you do on a sunny day? That might not give you more, but why do you go do these things on a sunny day? And those are very generic little questions, but sometimes just changing that one word at the beginning will open it up from being a very short answer to being something more involved. Your questions, asking questions should be ones that apply principle. And I'll explain the converse of this in a minute, and I don't. But you want to ask the questions that anybody can answer. Say Paul has told the Philippians about this, about being humble, and showed Jesus an example. What does humility look like in your life? You know, it's a question that I don't have to know anything about what Paul's done. I don't have to know anything about Philippians. I don't have to understand how Jesus gave up his throne to be on earth. But I understand humility, and I can start processing. Well, yeah, how would I be more humble? What does humility look like in my life? So you want those to be very applicable questions. How does it affect me? And so anybody can answer that question. I don't have to have biblical knowledge to answer that question. Anybody can answer it. And that's the question. That's what I mean about applying principle. And of course, along with that, you want to ask a question that asks for opinion. You're not looking for a hard truth fact. You want a question that is open to opinion. So that way, the person in the back of the room that may have only been in Bible class for twice in the past 10 years can give you an answer. Just like the person who sits up front and is there every time the door is open can give you an answer. Those are the do's. The don'ts, they kind of go hand in hand with the do's. Don't ask an obvious question. What did Paul say in verse 4? Really? Your class is smarter than that. And if you start asking obvious questions, they'll shut down on you. They'll quit talking because they're like, well, that's clearly there. I'm not going to answer that. I don't feel the need to answer that question. And then you'll have one gracious person in the class that'll pop up and answer the question because it's been too quiet, and they want you to move on. But don't ask an obvious question. If it's clearly in the text, then let it be clearly in the text. We don't need to tell people. There is an exception to that. Sometimes you really want to drive home a point, and you need people to put their eyes on the text and see what it says. In that case, you might ask a very obvious question. I need you to put your eyes on it, because even though it's obvious there, we don't seem to understand it. So that would be the only time you would ask an obvious question, is that you're really trying to drive home a point. But for the most part, you're leaving those questions out. Don't ask a question about background. I think sometimes we make an assumption that a lot of people in our class have some strong Bible knowledge that they may not have. And so we don't want them to tell us, well, what was Paul thinking here? I have no idea what was Paul thinking. I don't know what those of you who may have gone through SIBR or some other training, well, you might know that because you've studied that a little bit and you understand where he's coming from. But your average person in the class is not. So don't ask them the background questions. Don't ask them those questions that help develop it. As teachers, that's really our responsibility. Our responsibility is to give them the background and give them the foundation of where this is coming from. Don't make them have to do that for you. Because then you start really getting into an area of opinion where there isn't opinion. It's hard truth in Scripture. We want to make sure that that's what's taught and not what's heard in class. And along with that is don't ask for interpretation. Don't ask the class to interpret what that means. Now, I realize that this may be a little dicey because we want them making application, but we really don't want them interpreting the text. Again, that's our job as teachers. Our job is to interpret the text. This is what Paul said. I keep stumbling on Paul because the epistles are the easiest to work with. And this is how it applies this is how it translates, this is how the principle carries across the gap to us. Then ask the question about how do we apply the principle. Don't ask them to interpret it. Because you're going to have various levels of education in the class, and then it often will come out as opinion. I got a minute or two before I move on to just the last couple points I want to make. Does anybody have any questions about that? Any questions about my questions?
I hear kind of slow pitch softball versus fast pitch curveball, on the questions here.
Yes.
Try to give them something they can hit.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because you will find that your class will learn more if they're talking. If somebody says something, they'll bring up a little nuance that you didn't think about. And the person over here will go, oh, now I get it. Now I know how to relate that. So my goal in my classes is that I will teach you the information, and then I want my class to make the application. Now I have application in my mind, but I'm going to ask questions to try to get the class to bring out the application. Here's the message. How do we use it? And I will try to get my class to do that by asking questions. Any other comments? All right, in my last 5 minutes, it might go sooner, but in what I've got left, I did have more keys, but there are two that I really think are important when we teach. And I've got to preface this first one. This one gets me in trouble sometimes. I am talking specifically about our 35 to 45 minutes, 35 to 45 minute hour that we get on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights. That's what I'm talking about. So I'll explain this more, but to keep that in mind as I give you this statement. It is not our goal to teach the Bible. It is our goal to get the class to apply the Bible. So in our Sunday morning Bible classes and most of our Wednesday evening Bible classes, it is not our goal to teach the Bible. It is our goal to get people to apply the Bible. Now let me explain that just a little bit. I'm not saying you shouldn't teach the Bible. Do not get me wrong there. That's not what I'm saying. But I think you've been in classes where all they do is teach the Bible, one thing after another. If you're an SIBI or someplace like that, you should expect that. I mean, that's their purpose. Okay. But if we are in a Sunday morning Bible class, that's not what they're there for. But as teachers, we do have to teach the Bible. We have to explain whatever our passage is for that morning. We've got to fully explain what it means and what the Bible is trying to tell us. But our overall goal on a Sunday morning, and again, most Wednesday night classes, is to get the class to apply that message. So, if you get nothing else from me, I hope you get that. That should be your ultimate goal when you sit down every week to prepare your lesson, is that what is here that I can get my class to learn and grow and apply, and that they'll think about it. And then back up from that, and what do I have to teach them so that they get that? The second thing, key to me that relates to this, and I actually just spouted this off the other day, and Bill and I was discussing this class, this teaching, and it's something I believe, but I've never said it this way. If the lesson doesn't change me, how do I expect it to change my class? We had some material that was given to, and we're all in the same boat. We end up having we get material from different places. And I got it, I had picked up the lesson, and I read through it, and I went, I get nothing from that. It doesn't do anything for me. So I went, I got to change it. Because if that's not changing me, it's not going to change my class. So if, next time you do that, hey, did I get something out of this? Did I grow a little bit from this? Did I learn something from this lesson? And if not, then you need to rework the lesson. Because if you're not growing from it, you're not going to help your class grow from it. So those two things. And that brings me to my end. Any questions?
We got a couple things after you do
And Bill's going to correct me. All right, so I'll leave it to Bill and we'll let him wrap it up.
that. Okay, so, I think out of this first session, here's what we wanted to, one of the, again, the main things that Tim does a really good job. He was very humble in that, but he does a really good job. Here's a question that you have to answer, ask and answer is this. What are you doing at your congregation to train teachers? What systems do you have in place in order to train teachers? Especially adult ed. Like we do actually a lot of stuff, right, for our elementary. The question here is this: what are you doing at your church to train teachers? And again, I want to emphasize this: is that I want to emphasize the point is that you could start like we started. We called Michael Whitworth. We got him in for a weekend. He does a Saturday seminar. It was really good. It was the beginning of what we wanted to do with teachers, and then we just started building. I know that you could sit down with Tim. He has a lot more of this than what he thinks he does, all right? But we've already done this like 3 or 4 times at Sunset. 2 times a year we get this incorporated into our Wednesday night curriculum. Let me tell you how we introduce this in. We say to the congregation at Sunset, would you like to know how to study the Bible? Would you like to know how to study the Bible? So what we do is we open it up. Originally the way we did it is, would you like to be a Bible class teacher? And guess how many people came? Not very many. But here's the thing. If you said, would you like to learn how to study the Bible? Then here's what would happen. We had a full house on that one. We would take them through head, we would take them through heart. The class would end, and then we would take those who said, then towards that, we would go, now, if you want to learn how to be a teacher from this, we'll train you. Okay? So I just want to give you a little thing, but here's the question. At some level, each congregation needs to have a place where they are training their adult ed Bible class teachers. What are you doing? What are you doing at your church to do this? And we had to solve that. We had to solve it real fast because our pool of people was coming to an end. All right? Okay, I was told it is over. Now, listen, for some of you who are going, I'm on the fence whether I'm going to come back or not after this thing. I want to let you know, we're going to do a skill thing when we come back after our break, all right? So, what do? We go to the...
We have a 15-minute break, and then we're going to the gym back here for a devotional time.
Devotional time, all right. Okay, all right. Thank you so much for being here, all right?